I'm Park Howell, and welcome to the Business of Story, where I consult, teach, coach, and speak on the applied science and bewitchery of brand and business storytelling, so that you can clarify your story to amplify your impact and simplify your life.
I thought it was just a stupid picture of a pig in the ocean. But after hearing that story, I had to have it. Now I wasn't just buying a picture. I was buying a story. Story literally made the picture worth more money to me.
That's what businesses are about. People buy brands. People buy stories much more than anything else.
I work with a lot of big enterprise companies, but let's just say I always tell folks, drop the PowerPoint, close your laptops, start with your story.
If you want people to get engaged and you want people to act, you have to tell them an emotionally powerful story. That's with great characters, it's with uncertain outcomes, and it's with high stakes and drama.
All business strategy is a story.
Hi, and welcome back to the Business of Story. Park Howell here, and I am so glad you are with me today. The reason why, we've got an interesting guy that reached out through email and really hooked me. And I want to explain this to you. So I'm fortunate with the Business of Story that we are now over 200 episodes, been doing it for 4 years. And I got to tell you, we probably get, 5 to 10 requests every week from people who want to be on the show. And I will say 9 out of 10 of those requests are just boilerplate, someone's PR firm or booking agent, and they just send the exact same request to everybody. And of course, I want to protect you, the listener, and only bring on guests that are actually going to help you become stronger with your storytelling skills, so that with those skills, you can become a more confident, influential communicator and get the things out of life you're really looking for. So I thought, what a better way to start off the show than read you a bit of the request I got. And here's how it went. Opened up my email. Hi, Park. I'm a big fan of the Business of Story podcast. Now, let me stop right there. Flattery will get you everywhere. But the thing is, everybody says that. And so you're like, yeah, I don't know. But our guest actually proved it out. And he says, I pay close attention when topics cover areas about the creation of new direct-to-consumer marketing and sales through storytelling. So now he's got my attention. He says, recently I listened to the podcast entitled How to Immerse an Audience in Your Brand Story. That's show number 92, or 192, by the way, with L.S. Larson. And he says he shares how brands can immerse audiences in stories to promote their brands. Well, would it be of interest to the Business of Story podcast audience to learn the proven product storytelling formula that I discovered, which has been successful for generating over $6.5 billion in sales of products and services for small companies, startups, and Fortune 500 businesses? So right there, I'm going, okay, he listens to the show. He actually called out an episode that he listened to and is relating his ask to that and says, oh, by the way, I've got something your listeners quantifiably are going to want to hear about. So he got my attention. Then he continues, I'm pretty sure they would be interested in this. I believe I have the right content to share with your audience, business-minded professionals. So he's paying attention. I like that. That could use this information for their own business right away. Let me wrap this up. I won't tell you the whole thing. He kept going, but he says at the end, who am I and how could I claim to know this? Well, my name is Kerry, and I am co-founder and executive creative strategy director of Script to Screen. My company, Script to Screen, is one of the largest privately held performance direct response agencies in the country. If you check us out at our website, scripttoscreen.com, you will quickly see who our valued clients are, what we have accomplished, and how we continue to be successful, and how we are forging ahead in our new world of business and commerce. When we built this business 30 years ago, we started from nothing and grew it into a leading direct response company, simply following the formula that I outlined below. And this, by the way, is the formula we're going to talk about today. Ken has just published his first book, This Works Marketing, that documents thorough case studies, personal experiences, and strategies and tactics that have generated business-changing results for their clients. So you know what my response to Ken was? Hi, Ken. Thanks for your detailed note and how you actually spoke specifically to our needs. Parentheses, nobody does that, unprint. It must be your direct sales chops. So with that, folks, please welcome to the show, Ken Kerry, to teach us about direct-to-consumer marketing and how to use story to cut through, to understand your audiences and actually get them to act. Ken, welcome to the show.
Well, thank you, Park. I appreciate that very much.
Yeah, I get these every single day, and it's really frustrating, as most podcasters do. But yours really struck a tone with me because it felt like there was caring in it. You obviously had listened to the show. You even called out who our audience was, so you empathized with who was on the other end of this podcast, who this is in service for. And nobody does that. So is that a result of your direct-to-consumer sales chops?
Well, I would say part of it, Park, but really it comes down to it's just professional courtesy. When you're busy, someone else is busy. And my father-in-law was just a huge influence in my life and a mentor. And, he always said to me, treat people the way you'd like to be treated yourself. So, it's part of what I do as a business, but it's part of building a relationship with somebody who said, where you're saying, you know what, I value what you're doing and I would like to be part of it and I don't want to waste your time.
Well, I appreciate that. And I wish more people would follow that direction because I imagine I probably actually turn away some really good guests, but their initial story or their initial reach out to me is just so stale that they don't connect.
Yeah. And I understand that because, and I agree with you because, if you can't take a minute to understand what we're all about, then why do I want to, deep dive any further with you? You got to engage with me first. And it's really kind of goes back down to what we were talking about and kind of what I reached out to you. It's how do you connect to your consumer? In this case, I connected to you because A, I like what you do. B, of course, I'd like to be part of your ecosystem, which is fantastic. But at the same time, I want to connect with your customers and everybody needs to connect with their customers. And there's a way to go about it. And part of it is, just showing courtesy. But there is, like I said, there is a method to go about it. And, I just felt like it would be valuable to share with you and your audience because it really doesn't matter if you're selling, a subscription to a very expensive product on television or if you're the yoga studio down the street. It's really all the same.
Absolutely. And I'm so glad you're here because I love your new book out. This Works Marketing, the proven system generating billions in sales for brands and every size business. So why don't you take our listeners to your backstory? You've been at this direct-to-consumer, direct response marketing for 30 years. How did you and I believe your co-founder is your wife, Barbie, Ken and Barbie running the direct response business.
Yeah. If you have a new one there, I'd love to hear it, but
I don't. I'm going to leave it there.
Okay. Well, thank you. Before I get into that, I'm going to tell you a little bit about This Works Marketing. And the reason why it became This Works Marketing is because we've been doing this, as you said, for 30 years. And every time we work with a business or a company and they go through the method that we've been able to develop, at one point or another during the whole process, a light bulb comes on and someone says, hey, you know what? This really works. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And I kept hearing that over and over and over again. So that's why the name of the book. And actually, people have actually said to me, actually, it should be a marketing strategy book. And I said, yeah, but that's no fun because everybody said This Works Marketing. And that's how we got the name.
Oh, that's great. Yeah. So you're listening to your own consumers.
Exactly. Mm-hmm.
Yes. Makes sense.
Yeah. So my background is in sports network television. I graduated from college and I got in, when you
where'd you go to school?
I went to school at San Diego State University.
Oh, our daughter graduated from there.
Really? Yeah. So I went there to go play football, but I also went there to get my degree in journalism and television production. So when I was going there, I started getting more and more into it. And then, there's a point where the coach says, you're not as good as you think you are. you better think about another profession. that kind of happened to me.
Yeah.
So I got into television and journalism, and then as I graduated, I started working for ABC Sports as a what they call a PA, which is a production assistant, and basically you're getting coffee and donuts is really what you're doing.
Mm-hmm.
But I worked my way through that, really learning television production and the ins and outs of it. And I did a lot of directing and all that kind of stuff. So then I met my soon-to-be wife at a television station, and she was the on-air talent for sports at this station. So we met, and we quickly started dating, and we got to this crossroads in our professional lives where, believe it or not, Park, when you do World Series and Olympics and college football national games and Super Bowls and all that stuff, after a while, it's just another game. It's not that exciting after a while. So we got to that point. We were both in our career. We said, if we're going to do something that we want to do, now's the time to do it, because we were young and, we didn't have any debt. It was like, hey, let's go do this. So this was around late in the 80s, and I'm going to say 88. And we saw these TV shows and they were calling them infomercials. We saw these shows on TV, and they were just terrible. I mean, selling real estate and selling whatever. It was bad.
Well, I'm trying to think. That was like early in the industry for infomercials. When
Yes.
did they actually start playing?
Well, 1984, Ronald Reagan deregulated television advertising time. So what that means is, at that point, he said, you know what? You don't have to have a 30-second ad or a 15-second. You can do whatever you want. You own the time. If you want to sell it, sell it. So that's when it started. And entrepreneurs basically started saying, well, I can buy 30 minutes of TV time. I can really tell my story about my product. And that goes back to the whole, foundation of what we're talking about here today, is I can really tell the story in my product and get people to understand why what I'm selling is better, different. I can prove to you, I can demonstrate it. I can really tell you everything about that I can't just do in 30 seconds. So that's why it started.
Yeah, but you're saying, 4 years after the fact, in 1988, you're
Mhm.
looking at the pioneers really that have
Absolutely.
invented this medium, and you're just saying, man, this can really be improved.
Oh my God. I said, this is crap. This is crap. So I use this analogy. I said, you ever been to the Museum of Modern Art, and you go in there and you see this piece of artwork, and it's like a soup can and a bench in a corner, right? That's the art. And you're like, what is that? You're like, I'm not an artist and I could do that, right?
Yep.
Well, that's what we thought in this television advertising business. We thought, this is crap. We could do that. Well, you better be careful with that statement, because we thought the same thing. We produce network television quality shows. We could certainly produce this. I mean, how hard can that be? Well, it's hard. And we got our butts handed to us.
What happened?
Well, we created a product that was very early on in the self-help, positive affirmation audio tapes, where you creating this positive mindset with affirmations on tapes, and you listen to it, and after a while, you start getting this positive attitude, and you start thinking about things that you want to do, and it gets you to take action, right? And as we all know, nothing happens unless you take action. You can think about stuff all day long. So anyway, we got into that. We made the tapes. We put together this program, and then we produced this beautiful infomercial, and it bombed. It bombed. I mean,
nothing happened. So it wasn't that you were just in the infomercial production business, but you were actually produced tapes, a product that you were going to sell through infomercials.
Yeah, we produced the product. We produced the show. We did everything. And, the biggest lesson from that was, we produced a product that we liked, and we produced a message that we liked, and the consumer recognized that, and they let us keep it. which is not a good place to be.
You didn't place your consumer at the center of your story, obviously. Yeah.
Exactly. So
did you almost go out of business? I mean, how much did you lose in that proposition?
in the tune of several $100,000.
Ooh,
it hurt.
yeah.
It hurt. But we had it from investors, their family and the family and friends investor group, right? And whatever money we could dig out of the couch.
So it made Thanksgiving kind of awkward, huh?
Yeah, you think?
Uh-huh.
But you know what? But it's interesting you say that, because that was one thing that my wife and I did not want to do. I didn't want to have those conversations. I'm like, I'm going to work my fingers to the bone. We're going to work our fingers to the bone to get whole, because I don't want to look at people across the turkey table and them give me the stink eye, right? I don't want that.
Yeah.
So we got to a point where we got almost whole. I'm not going to say when we were totally whole, but almost whole. What we did with that, we started to listen to our customers, started listening to them. What do they want? How do they see this fitting in their lives? And as we were getting that feedback, we were molding our message and telling our story about our product to fill their needs. And once we figured that out, then things turned around, and the show we started to make some money, and we were able to, pay back debt and all that kind of stuff. But there came a point where, okay, now what?
Yeah.
And so this is funny. The naivete of it was, because we're in network television, you just put your credits on the end of a show. We didn't know the difference, So we just put credits on the end of the show, and it had our phone number. Remember that when you called people up on the phone on a landline? Remember that?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. So
Still did.
So we got these phone calls. We said, we saw this show and it was really compelling, and I bought it, and I have this product, and I really like to hire you guys to do that. And we're like, well, we're not really a business, but so I put my hand over the phone, and I turned back down the hall and said, well, let me talk to marketing. And I, hauled down the hall to nobody. Exactly.
Yeah.
To nobody. And matter of fact, at this time we had a 6-month-old daughter, and she was bouncing in the hallway of this office that we were at. So, we had no money, a show that wasn't working, a 6-month-old daughter, and we were on the edge, right?
Living the American dream, right?
Exactly,
there.
right?
Uh-huh.
So then people said, hey, we'd like to hire you to do that. And I'm like, okay. So that's kind of how it started, Park, is that people asked us, they saw our shows and said, hey, we'd like you to do this. So they
weren't buying your product, but they liked how you produced
exactly
the stories and what was on. And so it wasn't maybe then, if I'm hearing you right, a function of having a poorly produced infomercial. It's just you had a product that nobody wanted.
Yes. And we didn't position it well.
Mm-hmm.
And that was, a combination of those two. So, but we learned how to position it better, quote unquote. We learned how to tell the story better, fitting to our customers' needs. And it started to get better and better and better. But at that point, we're like, all right, what's next? And then people started calling and say, would you produce it for us? I'm like, okay. And we threw out some stupid numbers, and people
did it.
And they did it.
What are some of the infomercials that our listeners may know you for out there?
Well, have you ever seen a product called the Total Gym with Chuck Norris and Christy Brinkley?
Yep.
That's a project that we worked on. Shark vacuums.
By the way, those are great vacuums.
They are great vacuums.
They are fantastic.
So you see that on the air all the time. We've done stuff for Bare Minerals, for the largest consumer packaged goods companies in the world, to Bose, to pure water faucets, to Generac generators, all the way to, there's just a lot. Yeah. Many.
And you've got the head of Oric wrote your introduction, giving you rave reviews about how you helped them sell their 8-pound vacuum, and were there after Katrina hit and completely disrupted their operations in New Orleans. And you guys saying your praises about just being by their side through all that. So that's
Yeah, David Oric is just one of the iconic sales people and absolute gentlemen, and a fantastic salesman, and just a great person. And he and I become friends, very good friends. But we worked together, and we produced about 12 shows and commercials for that company, and literally took it from several, like a $20 million company that had privately owned Orc stores to over 300 million in about a year and a half.
Well, let's look at that for a second then, and
Okay.
let's explore your work with Oric. Can you take us to a time or a project where you saw storytelling really work for them to help turn the corner, and move them into those rarefied air sales?
Absolutely. I'm glad you asked that, because there's a little setup to it, and I'll get to the story specifically to the setup. So, as I said, Mr. Oric is a fantastic salesman. So we're all sitting around the conference table at their headquarters, and it's in New Orleans at the time. And there's all the C-level executives and all the international salespeople. And there's probably 15 people around the table.
And what year is this roughly?
This is in let's see. It's 2004.
Okay, so we're early 2000. Okay.
So we're sitting there, and he talks about, he hears everybody give their opinion on what the advertising agencies do to sell the vacuum. And he stops the meeting, he looks at everybody, and he says, you know what? Here's how we're going to sell this vacuum. Make her life easier. That's all he said. Make her life easier. And I'm like, you know what? He just cut to the chase. So our job from that point on was, how are we going to tell the story about this vacuum that is going to make her life easier? Because she's busy, she's got kids, she's got a husband, she's got a job, and she takes on the chores of cleaning the house. So you better make her life easier. If you don't make her life easier, you don't have a chance. So that was kind of our North Star. And then so we broke it down and said, all right, we need to position the product. Every single feature and benefit has to level up to how it's going to make her life easier. So we had to tell the story of why you want a bagged vacuum versus a bagless, why you want 2 pounds versus 22 pounds. So you tell those stories about why you want these things and how it's going to help you make your life easier. And at the end of the day, she's going to buy it because she's convinced that you've told her a compelling enough story and you've demonstrated to her, which is an extremely important part of storytelling, is demonstrating exactly what you're talking about, because people got to
show, don't tell.
Exactly.
Mm-hmm.
Got to show it. And so when you do that, and then you create this great value proposition, you put it all together, you can sell a relatively unattractive vacuum. In every sense of the word, it was a very unattractive vacuum. But the story was told so well, and the features and benefits were so pinpoint to her pain points that it sold like crazy.
So when David Oric said that, make her life easier, was he going off of research that they looked at, or was he just going off his guts of selling vacuum cleaners his whole life?
Guts. Because he tested that product through miles of carpet through hotels across the country. And he would literally give it to the hotel staff and say, tell me what you think. And he would walk with these people up and down the hallway. What do you like? What do you this? What do you like? And he's like, when you're doing miles of carpet and you're going from floor to floor to floor and you're taking it off that cart, it better be light. And it better do its job, because they don't have time to go back over things over and over and over again. So it was really boots on the ground research that he knew that was the case. And then, so I would say that he knew more about his audience than any type of research group could ever do, because he was there to see it happen.
And he was there understanding and empathizing with their plight. So it's kind of funny. It's the exact opposite of when you and Barbie launched your product.
100%. It couldn't be.
You wanted, only to find out that the rest of the world did not.
couldn't be. The opposite couldn't be more specific, but we learned.
What a learning. Yeah, that's what I was going to say. What a learning lesson.
Yeah.
So in your book, you take us through, it's really terrific book too, because you can go through, I found, and I'm doing this now for the business of story, and I'm just taking each one of your chapter headings, and then I'm answering that question of how
Oh,
would I
awesome.
promote business of story? Because we were doing a master course, and I could just see all the mistakes I've made in trying to push that out. Well, we've got lots of folks showing up, but I can see now after reading your book, oh, I got to pay more attention to what you have learned over your 30 years. And you've broken it down into like these three main areas of marketing essentials, marketing results process, and then finessing the close.
Yep.
So can you kind of, take us through each one of those, quickly, and maybe share a story or two that makes your point, but so that our listeners could be taking notes right along and say, here's how you can apply this in your world. And then the other question I have for you before you jump into this, you are direct to consumer, and I've been on the website or at scripttoscreen.com, and I've looked at, many, many, many infomercials on there, many of them that I recognize. And I asked myself, does this also work business to business, or how can you make that work business to business? So in your answers, I'm going to raise the hurdle a little bit. What you've learned in direct to consumer and how our listeners, even in their B2B world, might be able to use these same ideas.
Okay, great. Thank you. Well, so I'm gonna go a little rogue on you a little bit because I did break the book up into 3 parts, but really, it really comes down to 12 really essentials. I just happened to break them up in 3 little pieces because it would just be easier to digest that way.
Perfect. Okay.
You don't even need to ask anybody. You know that we're living in a world where attention spans are fragmented, right? So I don't care if it's television, radio, digital, social, whatever the platform you're on. First thing you have to do is get someone's attention. If you can't get someone's attention, you have no chance to tell their story.
Ken, I like to say that we live in this world now where attention deficit disorder is a communicable disease, and we are all the viruses.
And you know what? I've heard that before, and I tweaked it actually, Park. I say we live in attention deficit disinterest.
There you go.
You know what? If I'm not interested, if you can't get me interested, I'm gone. I'm gone. I love the fact that you said that because I couldn't agree more. So how do I overcome that? Well, you got to have a hook. Something has to hook somebody in. And I don't care if it takes 2 seconds, 15 seconds, whatever. You got to hook them. If you can hook somebody, get their attention, you've got a chance, right? You've got a chance. So that's an important hook. And interesting thing about, I'll tell you a story about a great hook that we did was we were selling this Bose. They called it a 3-2-1 system, which was a Bose speaker system you hooked up in your house, and you can make it sound like a theater, right? So we're sitting there going, how are we gonna sell this? Besides saying this just sounds great, how are you gonna get somebody's attention there? So what we did was we actually worked with Bose, and they have this experience trailer. So in this trailer, they hook up this.
You're talking like a trailer they pull in somewhere.
Yeah. And they hook up the speakers inside, and people would come in, listen to it, all that. And I said, well, why don't we just jam a bunch of people in there, right? Jam a bunch of people in there and throw on something absolutely amazing. Just rock their world. I mean, like guns and everything, right?
And you're shooting an infomercial while doing.
We're shooting an infomercial. So when the people came out, can you imagine, like, oh my gosh, that was the best thing. Oh, they're just so high on that experience. And we stuck a camera in their face and got that reaction. And that's what we used as a hook. And that worked really well. It stopped people going, what are they talking about? What are these people so excited about? And that hooked our audience in right away. That's just one example of many, many ways that we've gone about it.
In your book, you had talked about the Bose engineers folks coming to you and saying, we want you to talk about the amazing engineering in the features and functions. And you're like, nobody cares about that.
Exactly. Well, you know what? Exactly. Because that was the story they wanted to tell, because they're engineers. And I looked at that and I go, again, I'll go back to what I learned before. If you build something that you like, the consumer will recognize it and let you keep it. Build something that the consumer wants. Tell the story that they want to hear, and then you'll get them in. So that's what we said. Time out. We're not going to get into, megahertz and all this kind of stuff. Nobody cares. Nobody knows. They want to know that I turn this on and my head blows up and I have so much fun. That's what they want to know.
So it's
right?
not just a hook then, it's an emotional hook.
Absolutely.
It's not an intellectual, rational hook. It's a hook that makes him smile, makes him get goosebumps, makes him cry, whatever it might be.
That's a very, very important differentiator, Park. I'm glad you said that. It is an emotional hook. You've got to touch somebody somehow, somewhere. And whatever emotion that is, and how that pertains to your product, you have to find that first.
And that's right at the top of your list then?
Yep. And then we go into, the part of telling a story is, what is your problem? What is the pain point that you're having? If I can uncover what that problem is, I can uncover what that pain point is, and I can solve it with my product, now you're talking to me. Now you're like, okay, now you've got my attention. I want to hear you. You understand my problem and you can solve it. Now I'm going to listen to you, right? There's a difference between hearing you and listening to you, right?
So you're going to emotionally hook them in, but then you're going to say, and here's why it matters. Here's what we're solving for you. And I imagine you don't really know what problem you're solving for until you get with your audiences and your customers and really figure out what's driving them.
Absolutely. Mm-hmm. Absolutely. I mean, you could think it's one thing, and I'm trying to think of an example, a story of it'll come to me, but we've done that many, many times. We thought it was one thing, it turned out to be something else, and it totally turned the whole campaign around. But that'll come to me. Mm-hmm. But so anyways, then what's really important is your story. And it's becoming more and more apparent even today, especially as there's 50 million millennials in the world that are really contributing to the overall economy of the United States of America, right? So that story happens to be, and I only bring that up because it's becoming more and more apparent in some of the advertising that we're doing, is that you want to tell what's your personal story as an inventor, as a developer, as a founder. Why did you come up with this? Because if there's that empathetic feeling of, I can feel your pain, I as a developer came up with this product because I had the same problem you did, that is a tremendous important part of the story, where now you're saying, okay, you're telling me from a point of experience and you're empathizing with me. You're not talking to me or at me, you're empathizing with me. So that's really, really important.
I'm living vicariously through your story. So when you told us your story about yours and Barbie's, misstep and what it cost you and how you had to save face with your family, we can all live vicariously through you and connect with you. And the fact that then you made good on all of that, that's a hell of a man gets in a hole, man gets out of a hole story.
I appreciate that. And believe me, I knew you led that way because you're a good storyteller and you knew that was the way to hit. so that's exactly why we tell that. It's because I can sit there with our clients, and I've done this. I said, listen, I've written the check. I've lost the money. I know what it feels like when you're entrusting your brand, your product with us. I get it. But let me tell you, I know how to get you out of it. We have a really good expertise on how to create something that will sell that product for you. Because there's many times, Park, I don't care if it's the biggest brands in the world or the entrepreneur who begged, borrowed, and steal to get all the money to do something, or the VC, the venture capital backed company that says, hey man, you better show growth or we're cutting you off. I've sat in all those boardrooms and it's all the same. It's like, we've got to do something, or we've got to create another channel. And that's always our challenge up against us. And we say, hey, been there, done that. And now once that happens, it's like, okay, now we're in good hands. And I don't say that to be braggadocio. I just say that because it's reality.
Yeah, you've been burned.
It's real.
You've been through the trenches and you know what they're going through, and they can appreciate that.
Exactly. Because the CMO is looking like, am I going to keep my job? The VC is saying, the people getting the VC money, are they going to cut off the money? is the entrepreneur looking and say, do I have to look at somebody at Thanksgiving with the stink eye and you lost all my, I mean,
Yeah.
those are real. I don't care how high you are up the ladder. Those are real.
And how often when you take on maybe a new client that doesn't completely understand your approach and they show up and you've got an inventor of something and they are all about the features and functions because they're excited about it. Look at what I invented. Look at what I came up with. Sell this. And you're like, well, before that, let's actually talk about the origin story. And do they push back on you? They're like, nobody cares about that, but you have to illustrate it to them.
You know, I like to say that we are vetted enough with these potential clients that come in that they understand what we're going to do. And we're fortunate to be in a position, Park, we say, you know what, then maybe this isn't for you. And, you know, we don't really want to work on that project if it's going to be your way or the highway. That's fine. There's lots of people who will do that, but we're going to tell you what you need to hear, not what you want to hear. And if that doesn't work for you, that's okay. We'll still be friends and we'll still have coffee. But I want to help you. I don't want to pander to you.
Right.
You
okay,
know?
so we've got the emotional hook. What problem are you solving for? And really, all brands are in the problem-solving business.
Absolutely.
Get right down to it. What story do you have to now make
Yep.
this enticing and really start enveloping your customer, your audience in your story? What's number 4 on your list?
Number 4 is, how are you different? How are you different than what's out there that's going to solve my problem, right? So if I'm a Shark vacuum, right? There's plenty of good vacuums out there. There's Dyson, there's Hoover, there's Bissell, there's Oreck, there's thousands of them. So what? How are you different? What are you going to do different that is going to solve my problem? And you better get right up early in your message to tell me how I'm different, because I'm going to solve your vacuuming problem differently because of this. You have to take a look at trends in the business. You have to look at trends in what's working and what's selling and what's not selling. You got to look at consumer data and all that kind of stuff. But what was happening was companies were slowly moving out of the bagged business and getting into bagless vacuums. And Dyson broke through because they had this clever British guy, but they had a very expensive product. So we had to convince people how we're different is we're going to be bagless. We're not going to lose suction. And when you lose suction, you lose power, which is a bad thing because people relate power to cleaning ability. And you don't have to pay an arm and a leg to get that. That's how we cracked a wedge into that Gibraltar, if you will, of Dyson, because they owned it.
They designed the category. They were
exactly
able to get in there, and because of that, they were the high price, and you were able to come in underneath them then with this differentiator.
Yep.
Yeah, and it's a great vacuum.
Yeah, and it's a great product, but we were able to take almost 10% of the market share away from that, which meant hundreds of millions of dollars. So we had to say why we're different, because at that time, when you heard the word Dyson, you go, oh, that's that great vacuum.
Mm-hmm.
When you heard Shark, you went, what?
Yeah.
Isn't that the thing that swims in the ocean?
Well,
nobody had an idea.
We
had to create a story that which created the brand. So we did that by all those other things, but we had to separate ourselves from the competition, and that was how we're different. And then we talk, and I take a breath here because I'm throwing a lot out there, but at the same time, you've got hook, problem, solution, story. How are you different? You're like, oh my gosh, Ken, that's a lot. It is a lot. And you better make that message very simple, because if you make it complicated, you're going to lose people. So I bring it all back and say, okay, now let's take all that information and make it super simple. Just make it simple. If I can simply understand it, while you're doing all these other things, I'm more apt to stay with you even longer. So that's a real critical part.
I'm on your site and I'm looking at Atom Tight Lies, which is a fairway wood, and I'm a golfer. I'm a hack,
Yep.
Your basic 16 handicap, and I just bought a new set of. Well, I've had some pings, but I just added some tailor-mates to them. I'm waiting for them to be delivered. And of course, as I was going through your work, I go, oh, I remember those.
Remember that?
Clubs, the Atom Tight Lies. So take us very quickly through that. What is the emotional hook, the problem that they're solving? Maybe we'll skip the story behind it unless you can.
That's an easy one quickly.
Yep. Okay. And how do you make that all simple for Atom Tight Lies?
Okay. So the hook is that emotional reaction when you hit a great shot, right? You can relate to that. Oh my gosh, that was fantastic. That emotional takeaway, like I just killed it. We used that emotional hook of people swinging golf clubs going, oh my gosh, I've never hit a ball like that before. Oh my gosh, because every golfer can understand that, right? It's just that it's, when you hit it, when you just nailed it, you knew it, right? So that was our hook. The problem that we solved was golfers, and you'll understand this, is that most scoring, the best scoring are greens in regulation. And for people who don't golf, that means you want to get the ball on the green in a certain amount of strokes. So when you're at least putting for par, okay?
If you've got a par 4, you want to be on that green in
3. 2, 3.
Right. Yep.
The average guy wants to be there in 2. A pro wants to be there in 3.
Yep.
Or vice versa. Vice versa. So anyways, if you understand that, what makes that really difficult is that 185 to 200 yard shot is a very difficult shot for many golfers because your options are a fairway wood or a long iron, which is a 1, a 2, a 3, or 4 iron, which are extremely difficult to hit, right? Yep. You get it. So that was the problem we were going to solve. We're going to solve that problem from 185 to 200 yards to the green. We're going to solve that for you. Like, okay. So, and how are we doing that? What's the story behind that? Well, there's this gentleman named Barney Adams. He invented this club and he inverted the head. This is how you're different. He had an inverted head design in the fairway wood that gives you more surface area on the ground. So because people who golf, it's very difficult to hit the ball square, but if you have more surface area on the ground, it makes it easier. So Barney is a club designer, and he kept seeing this over and over and over again. Now people having these problems. He said, I'm a club designer. I can fix this problem. And that was his story. His story was, I see this all the time, and I finally designed something to help that problem. And then his design is what made him different. And then because it was a great club and it took the average golfer from hitting greens in regulation very minimally to increasing that, it changed the game.
So they could measure the impact on their scorecard, but they can also
literally
have those great shot feeling. And I suppose too, when you boil it down to the simplifying of that story, when you look at it, you see the picture. I'm looking at it right now on your website. It looks like a fairway wood, so you know exactly what you're talking about product-wise. And then the name Tight Lies really brings it full circle. You're saying, oh, a fairway wood that is probably easier to hit because if you're in the fairway, chances are you've got that tight lie, meaning there's not a lot of room for error there with that swing.
Right. Okay. And that simple selling message in this case, Park, was like when you took a average fairway wood shot, like a 3 wood we visually shot that from the face back, and then you morphed it into this new upside down design that how you were different was immediate. I mean, immediately you could see the difference. So that was a big part of it.
Yeah.
This you'll find interesting, a part of the story of how this came about was Barney Adams was in McKinney, Texas. He literally had everything he owned in the back of his Cadillac in the trunk. And he was a club designer at the Hank Haney Ranch.
Was this tin cup you're talking about?
This is a true one.
Yeah.
He literally drove from Texas to our office and said, guys, this is it. This is everything I own. I believe in this product and I believe in you guys. 3 years later, it was a $250 million company, eventually sold to TaylorMade, which eventually was purchased by Adidas. So that brand is over $500 million today.
Wow. Wow.
Yeah. Started with one infomercial that we did.
And how did that infomercial perform? Do you remember the numbers on it or what kind of ROI you got on it?
Oh yeah. Yeah. We were getting 4 and 5 to 1 return on investment, which is huge.
Nice.
It's just huge.
He probably got
Yeah.
himself a new Cadillac after that.
He got a Cadillac. He got a Cadillac.
After making that message simple, what's number 6 on your list?
So demonstrate. As you said,
Show, don't
you
tell.
have to show, not tell. So if the consumer can't see and demonstrate what you're doing, it's noise. And there are ways to do that on audio and audio, but I won't get into that. It's a whole different discussion. But if you're doing a commercial, whether it's on social, digital, on YouTube, or you're doing it on television or OTT, show me what you're talking about. So an example of that demonstration was, I'll go back to the Shark vacuum. We talked about bagless vacuum that doesn't leak out into the air, because that's a problem for people. They breathe that vacuumed up air and dust and allergens and all that kind of stuff. And we said, we're going to show you how complete suction is going to solve that problem. So we hooked up the vacuum to this black light, and we hooked up the competitor to a black light, and we vacuumed up everything with the competitor, and you could see the allergens and everything just coming out of the bag, just going all over the place. And you're like, wait a minute, I just vacuumed up that mess, but all this dust and dander is going out in the air, and the people are coughing and go, that's not good. So our demonstration was, okay, let's do the same thing with the black light, do the Shark, and nothing came out of the sides, nothing. So that demonstrated the unique selling proposition that we were making. You could turn the volume down, Park, and understand what happened, why that demonstration was so powerful. So that was really important.
You had also mentioned about a demonstration where you hooked a blender up to a ceiling fan or something like that to demonstrate the strength of the motor inside of it.
Yeah, we were doing an infomercial with Montel Williams, and Montel's just a good friend and just a fabulous guy. But I won't get into the story of how he got involved with it. But the point is that we said this blender is the most amazing blender you'll ever buy. It's so strong, it's so powerful, it can blend everything up. Super, super simple, because everybody's who has a blender has always dealt with that thing, or that something sticks and there's just some kind of problem somehow, and you're sticking the fork in there and then it goes off and the fork goes flying. Everyone's done that, right?
Yep.
So we said, all right, we could say this goes 27,000 RPMs, but what does that mean? Why is that good? I can't get it. So I said to our prop department, I said, is this powerful enough to hook up to a big conveyor belt that'll turn a big fan? And they're like, yeah, it'll do that. And I go, let's do that. Let's do that. So when we hooked it up, and in the commercial, when Montel would say, I want you to see how powerful this is, he turns up the power on the blender, which is hooked to this big fan, this huge fan. It's like 4 feet tall, Park, and it just blares and it goes, like crazy, and wind's blowing. We blow it in the audience. But that was the demonstration. Like, man, if this blender can move that, I'm sure it could eat up a carrot, right?
Yeah, connect the dots there.
Right. So, but that little demonstration literally was the diamond in the rough. That's what changed a blender into an emulsifier.
So you redefined what a blender was.
You got it.
Wasn't it Blend Tech that also did those crazy demonstrations where they would just, carve up, chop
a
up golf balls and bullets and whatever.
And phones. Yeah. But remember, those were blenders. We're better than a blender. We're an emulsifier.
Absolutely. So
that goes into positioning. That's a whole different story, but you know that.
But this is the point where I ask, this is all great for direct to consumer, and you're selling to consumers when you got a product you can demonstrate, but how can people, our listeners, if they're in the B2B world and they're selling intelligence and services and software as a service apps and those sorts of things, what can they learn from your direct response world where they could actually show something that is less visible?
Well, I think that big part of that goes into, let's just say you're a SaaS business, and and I'll just say a Salesforce, right? Something like that, where people have these problems in their businesses that they have to really organize a CRM to kind of just to do business.
Mhm.
Well, that's a problem that companies have. Well, Salesforce has come in and said, listen, we've solved that problem by doing it this way. So that would be specifically, show me what you have done to solve my problem specifically that others can't do. Now, if you have to bring up a competitor into your presentation, that's okay. But clearly communicate the problem that customer has specifically, and that's doing your homework. You got to know when you're going into that when you're going B2B and you're going into this business, what specifically is their issue, and then curtail your message to, this is your problem. This is how my SaaS product solves that different and better than the other people, and show them the deficiencies of what others can't do and how you can do it. And it may be a data story, Clark, at that point, but it could be done that way by breaking it down through a problem solution and demonstrating specifically to another product that they might be considering, and to really eliminate them out of that situation. So you're different, and you've solved a specific problem, and you've showed why you're better than the competition.
And I would imagine the emotional hook you want to really think about probably have to get out of your own rational brain and say, look, this isn't about features and functions of the software and how much greater it is, but emotionally, what do you get? It could be anything from, I look smart and I want to look smart to my employees, or I don't want to be waking up in the middle of the night frustrated again because my contacts are all over the place, or I need to hit my numbers and I am so busy and exhausted trying to manage my contacts that I've got to find something else.
Absolutely. You've hit the nail right on the head. It's like, understand their pain points and talk to their pain points and solve their pain points. Forget about everything else, because you're right. They want to either look smart, they don't want to have the burden of the stress, and they don't want to be in a situation where I can't solve the problems for our company because I don't have the right software. Nobody wants to look bad. Everybody wants to do good. So help them get what they need. Because at that point, you solve that, price is not an option at that point. That's not on the table anymore.
Absolutely. Because now you're understanding their story, their journey that they're on, and you're then writing and crafting and connecting your brand story to their wants and needs, essentially.
Exactly. And they're already doing the math in their head. They're going, well, okay, let's see, it takes my team 2 weeks to do this. I can cut it down into a week, and look at all this time I saved. They've already justified the cost, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, we've gone through 6 of the 12, and we don't have time to do the other 6, but here's what I'd like to do. Could you rattle off the next 6 and then pick one of those that you would like to end the show on? And of course, we're going to direct people to get your book, This Works Marketing, so that they can read through and get all of this information.
Awesome. Well, thank you, Park. Yeah. So the next one is authenticity. You have to be authentic. You can't make crap up, especially in this review-based economy that we're in. You can get exposed really fast. You have to be authentic.
Real quick on the authenticity thing, you had mentioned earlier about the 50 million millennials, and that's only one segment, but they are so distrusting of authority in every level. I think a lot of us now in this day and age are. So if you're not authentic, how are you going to win them over when you look like you're an authority on a subject?
Yeah, I mean, it's really, really important. And you're going to talk to them differently than I'm going to talk to a baby boomer. Right? Authenticity comes in different ways, but you just have to be authentic, and you just don't have to. If you've got a good product and you've got a good message to say, and you're passionate about it, authenticity will come. It's when you don't believe it, or you're doing something that is just not true to yourself. If you don't feel that way, believe me, your customer not going to feel that way.
Right.
Testimonials is an absolute game changer. We could go a whole another 3 podcasts on testimonials.
Social proof.
Yeah, social proof. I mean, and there's a whole process part. And it's funny, I was kind of hoping we get into that a little bit more, because there's a whole process of taking a testimonial through a journey to tell their story, to empathize with that end consumer. And it's not just asking questions. You have to carefully guide them through a story that gets them through a problem, a solution, a crescendo, and hit that empathy point. So there's a whole another thing there, but we won't
have you back on the show.
Yeah, that'd be.
And we will. We'll talk because I bring guests back.
Yeah,
quite often. And that sounds really interesting to try to understand their story.
Yeah,
and then how can you use that moving forward?
Yeah, and then we're going to talk about creating value. All these other things are fantastic, but at the end of the day, what's the value to me? Why does this make sense to me financially and even time-wise? But what's the value to me? Because if I can't understand the value to me, then all this other stuff is great window dressing, wonderful, but how is it going to be valuable to me? So there's many ways to put that together, but a value statement of and I'll just use a quick example of if you're going to spend 3 weeks putting together the sales report, and it's going to cost you, $50,000 man hours and all this kind of stuff. And I can sell you this SaaS product that's going to make you the ability to do this in 3 days, and you've just saved $48,000 in man hours. That's valuable. That's value, right? So you got to create that value. And then what's your offer? Once you've got somebody and you've got something like, I love everything about you're doing. The value is great. What's the offer you're making me today? Is this a better offer I can get somewhere else? Well, you better make it better to someone else, or they're going to go somewhere else. So you've got to add things and it may be, 2 weeks of free customer service or whatever, or customer service calls or something that's unique to you that you're going to create an offer that's become so compelling and that you're not going to want to walk away from it, right? And then once you get to that point, there's an urgency to act. What is it that you're going to do right then and there that's going to get somebody to say, listen, this ain't going to last long. And if you don't take advantage of this offer right now, you're never going to have that opportunity again. Matter of fact, you only have 24 hours to make that decision. And so that urgency to act, and as we talked about in your master classes, I didn't know that, but you understand when you're selling a class, there's an urgency to that. And there's an urgency to selling anything. And there's an urgency, heck, I don't care if it's an urgency to a relationship with your girlfriend to become her wife. There's an urgency to that. You got to create that urgency, right?
Because you don't want her running off with the competition.
So it works in so many ways. And then finally, you got to put it all together. You got to use all these elements very strategically in the right times and the right places. And for my business, Park, you understand, my job is to turn a prospect that's looking and kicking tires to a customer that's driving away with my product. That's my job, right? So I have to do that. So I have to put all those together, and that's weaving that all these chapters into one real seamless story. And that story is the person purchased it or joined your club or married you or listened to your presentation or whatever. Even if you're a pastor, people, come to the Lord or whatever. Well, whatever it is, you've got to put it all together to get that person to do something, right?
Yeah, and I guess how you understand that works is you make your story, or they make your story their story, because now they are enrolled in it. They've purchased. They are a part of the story. And then that story scales, providing you're delivering the goods for them.
Absolutely.
They go out and they talk about it. Word of mouth marketing.
Absolutely.
And they become an evangelist for your product.
Exactly. And like I said earlier, we live in this review-based economy where people are making decisions on a $40,000 home remodel based on a recommendation on Angie's List.
Yeah.
I mean, are you serious? But that's what's happening. So the power of that and how you can put that together to have people talk about you, your product, or whatever, to be the evangelist, because they will sell for you much better than you can sell.
Well, and this must all work because you've sold over $6.5 billion of product and services through this technique.
Yep. It works. And, but it takes time to figure it all out and strategize through it. But I always say that all these elements work and parts of these elements work. And I don't care if you're a yoga studio down the street or you're a Keurig, which is a $2 billion corporation where we were selling coffee makers and pods. It's the same. The zeros may be different, but it's still the same. It's still your business or their business, right?
Mm-hmm.
So
the approach to storytelling remains the same. Because
absolutely,
what do we all have in common? We're all Homo sapiens, and we love stories.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ken, thank you so much for being here. Where can people track down your book?
Well, you can go to Amazon and just Google, This Works Marketing. You'll find it on Amazon. Or you can go to my website at kenkerry.com and you can there's a link there to get the book and get more information about, what we do, what I do, speaking, all that kind of stuff, but at kenkerry.com or on Amazon. Well,
I appreciate it. And after reading it, now I know what I have to do my next time out where I'm selling my book and or my masterclass. And my next masterclass coming up in the fall, this is going to be hugely helpful.
Well, you let me know if I could help in any way. I just wanted to say, Park, I really appreciate you taking the time to go through what I did in the book, because as you were saying, giving accolades to me, I want to give accolades to you because that means a lot, because it really helped me help tell a story to your listeners that I hope is valuable to them because you did your homework. So I appreciate that.
Well, thank you so much. And it's really the first time out of over 200 episodes that we've talked about direct-to-consumer marketing and how to tell story in it. So it's a really, really terrific topic for all of our listeners. I appreciate it.
Well, I hope it gives your listeners a lot of value.
Well, thanks, Ken, and thank you all for listening to this edition of The Business of Story. If you like what you heard here and you've got friends and colleagues or clients and customers that can benefit from Ken's wisdom around direct-to-consumer storytelling and how you can use this in your B2B world as well, then by all means, please share this episode with them. And don't forget to pick up your own copy of Ken's book, This Works Marketing. And if I can be of service to you, come on over to The Business of Story, where I've got tools, tips, techniques, and talent like Ken here to help you craft and tell compelling stories that sell. So glad you're here. Look forward to having you back again next week. And until then, remember that the most potent story you will ever tell is the story you tell yourself. So make it a great one. Thanks for listening.